Hi, my name is Aniyah Pouncy. I'm a junior psychology major, sociology minor at Spelman College, originally from Detroit, Michigan. And today I'm going to be presenting on my research that looked at the differences in willingness to refuse sex based on relationship status. So practicing safe and consensual sex is extremely important within a romantic relationship. However, due to societal beliefs about women's roles, this consent is not always prioritized. So the Relationship Dynamics and Social Life Survey was a study conducted in 2016 at the University of Michigan that measured young women's sexual behaviors and their behaviors surrounding early pregnancy rates. I did a secondary data analysis of this data set and was able to come up with my research question: do partners in a romantic relationship feel comfortable refusing sex? I hypothesized that they wouldn't, and such that there would be a difference in the willingness to refuse sex based on relationship status, in the way that those within a romantic relationship would be less willing to refuse sex than those who are not in a romantic relationship. So there were 1,003 participants who participated in the survey. All of them were female, and they were ranging from ages 18 to 20 years old. This was also a particularly racially diverse sample, and it was also diverse amongst its religious affiliations. There were two questions that I took from the survey to do my analysis. The first question asked if they were in a romantic relationship, so yes or no. And then the second question asked if they would be willing to refuse sex if their partner really wanted to, and even if their partner would get upset if they did refuse it, how willing would they be to refuse sex? And so this was measured on a Likert scale from 0 to 5, with 0 being not at all willing and 5 being extremely willing to refuse sex. And so right here, we can see that romantic relationship status was approximately equally distributed, with 47% of the participants not being in a romantic relationship and 53% of the participants being in a romantic relationship. And so that's also reflected right here with our ends. 480 said yes and 430 said no to being in a romantic relationship, so that's about a 50 participant difference. And then right here, we can see the averages for the response to this second question. For those who were in a romantic relationship, their average response was around 4.06. And for those who were not in a romantic relationship, their average response was around 4.2. And so we can see that they're pretty similar, and we can also see that they're on the higher end of the response scale. So to statistically test my hypothesis, I ran an independent samples t-test. My results were not significant, and thus there was not a significant difference in the willingness to refuse sex based on relationship status. However, I stated that this may be due to the fact that the participants were so young. They were ranging from 18 to 20 years old, and the literature supports the idea that when they are this young, their sexual education and their participation within complex sexual and romantic relationships, their education is not necessarily informing their practices of consent as we would believe. Since the education is so low and the experience is so low, the age, them being younger, theoretically decreases the understanding of consent playing a role in how they actually practice consent. And then also, this study was conducted in 2016, and to me, it doesn't really seem like it, but it was almost 10 years ago. And so I stated that for future research, it would be interesting to see how the analysis would be different, how the responses would be different with a more recent data set, and then also how it will look different amongst ages if we had older age ranges, to see what their response would be to the second question, to see how the analysis would differ. 3 other areas of future research I'm interested in looking at is an all-male sample, so their response to receiving and not receiving consent, and then also their own practices of how they give consent. Secondly, looking at the differences independently based on race. So how do different races and cultural understandings practice consent due to the way that culture and history shapes our daily lives and our daily practices? I'm interested in looking at how race would moderate a relationship between their willingness to refuse sex or their consensual practices. And then finally, I'm interested in looking at samples that are divided amongst their religious affiliations, because religion has some particular guidelines depending on the religion that informs their daily practices and especially their relationships. And so I'm interested in seeing how those guidelines that inform their behaviors in the relationship also inform their sexual behaviors and their practices of consent. And so this is the references for the RDSL data set. It is available on ICPSR version 34626 version V5. You can just look it up and then it'll come. You can just look at RDSL and it'll come up. And then I just want to acknowledge the Spelman and Rise program, who helped fund my trip to my conference and then also helped fund for the printing of the poster. And then I would like to offer a special thank you to my advisors, Dr. Pierce Dunbar, who helped me throughout the class to understand the research process and to really iron out my question and make sure everything was up to par, as well as Dr. Blankson, who helped me get this together, summarize it, put it in a poster format, and to both of them for working with me to make sure I was confident to present. Thank you.